stuck in fight or flight, I mean, I think we can just stop there and say who isn't, right? I mean, in this, high tech, fast paced world, I think, everyone has a little bit of fight or flight in them. And how do you resolve that, or how do you help that, or how do you get unstuck, right? Besides turning off the TV and stop watching the news. So we're going to go over that on how we can address the brain, which is the software, chiropractic, and everyone else that does from the neck down is more the hardware stuff. And we're going to show you that there's an essential symbiotic relationship between the central and peripheral nervous systems. It's a very good relationship. Now we have to go over our disclaimer. Um, I won't read this. You guys can read it. We're not giving you any medical advice. We're not treating you, diagnosing you, or doing anything like that. That's what your doctor's for. We're just going to have an informative little get together chit chat. Okay. Now, who are we? Well, I'm on the left. I've been a chiropractor for 25 years. I had a very, high volume, successful chiropractic practice for about 25 years. I stopped doing that about 10 years ago just to focus on the brain and neurofeedback because I wanted to help all the kids that came in with their parents when they got adjusted. I knew there was something going on with them as far as the blank stares or the lost look. It's because they were on the medications for, ADD, ADHD. So I wanted to help those kids. My history is I'm the son of a neurosurgeon, so brains have always been around in my life since I've been growing up. I've advanced on. I've seen everything from the spectrum disorders to the concussion detection mitigation stuff. Um, all different kinds of conditions. If you can trace it back to the brain, I've seen it. Now I do a lot of neurofeedback peak performance training for like NASCAR, IndyCar drivers, and NFL players, pro athletes, um, because there's a definite need for that. They want to have the best brain to be on top of their game, but so does little Timmy that's suffering with ADHD or he's on the spectrum. He needs help too. Um, so that's why I started focusing solely on that. I've been doing neurofeedback for 26 years now. And Seth, you can go ahead and mention you or talk about you and then mention Dan.
Yep. I love talking about myself. So
I know.
I know. So you don't we all?
Yeah.
My background is in the nutritional lifestyle recommendations. I worked with a large whole food supplement company, Standard Process. Many of you have heard about before, but holistic health care is really just is my focus. What's the non-invasive way that we can help support the patient get the best outcome? I was a nutritional therapy practitioner, board certified holistic nutrition, and have worked with hundreds of chiropractors, thousands through network, but directly with hundreds. And just what works with patients, the systems and the processes and the nutrition protocols that we were doing for over a decade. And with neurofeedback, I've learned so much over the past since I've met Dr. Kevin, back almost 10 years ago now, about how the brain waves impact the body. And I'm fascinated about how we can influence the metabolic portion of the body with nutrition and lifestyle, how that can support the brain. And now with the tool of neurofeedback, how we can influence brain energy and the brain waves to influence the metabolic system as well. So the bidirectional relationship there is really just how we're going to be continuing to support our clinics that implement our system on how to get the best results with those two things implemented both. Dan Court was one of my largest accounts in with Standard Process in New York. Nutritional consultant, was extremely successful with nutrition with Standard Process. Was extremely successful in the past with three companies that he start and grew to be able to sell to New York Stock Exchange companies and NASDAQ companies. And so combining this with Dr. Kevin's experience, with my experience with nutrition, and with Dan's experience with nutrition and business, combining those all together, our goal is to take neurofeedback and make it a much more well-known service that chiropractors and healthcare practitioners in general implement into their support into their offices to just maximize the results. And we have the best of all worlds, really, is we're supporting the brain energy, we're supporting the metabolic system, and we're supporting the business aspect to make sure you get success from all aspects of patient results and clinic results. Because if you're not earning more income with this, then you're not able to help more people. And our goal is to help as many people as possible. So, really excited about that and just glad to be here. I appreciate everybody's time, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this tonight.
Yeah, before I scroll down, I just wanted to give a little, neurofeedback's been around since the 1950s. Technology today, you can pinpoint more areas of the brain than ever before. And everything we're going to show you here, does it fit under your scope of practice? And the answer is yes, because we're not diagnosing mental health conditions nor treating them. Okay. I just want to get that out of the way up front. Um, so why it matters now, of course, chronic stress is a new subluxation. Everyone has that. It's invisible. They sense it. It causes a lot of muscle spasms. It causes a lot of sleep disturbances. Um, Even when I was a chiropractor, there was stress back then. You adjust them, the muscles relax. And what do you say before you adjust them? Relax. Okay. That they relax for a second, automatically, so you can make the adjustment. But then when they get up, they feel great. They go home. They keep coming back because the stress doesn't go away. And that causes them to go back in the fight or flight mode and the muscles to spasm up and subluxate the vertebrae again. So it's like a repetitive cycle, which frustrated me when I was a chiropractor. I mean, what am I doing wrong here? Why do they keep coming back? I love my patients. I didn't want to adopt them. I just wanted to get them better and get them on their way. But I just didn't focus on the neck up and that relationship between the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and the central nervous system peripheral. So this actually this is why patients plateau usually. Even if they come in as many times as you tell them to come in, there's always this parts where their stress level doesn't go down. Their muscle spasms are there. Um, and it causes the bones to, the muscles to spasm and pull the bones back out of alignment. Um, so they have the chronic muscle tension and you got the sleep. I mean, whether they say they sleep well, are they really sleeping well? Is it REM sleep? Do they have enough REM sleep? This perpetuates the pain, sensitivity, and the fatigue as well. And the heart rate variability, instability, and blood pressure spikes. You definitely see that with the barrel reflex impairment and the reduced vagal tone. Okay. If you don't have the brain functioning as well as it should be. And limbic overreact activation, of course, that sustains anxiety, it keeps you in a perpetual fight or flight mode. It's like your sympathetic nervous system's on overdrive and your foot's on the gas pedal, not coming off. You never hit the brakes. That causes this repetitive loop where the pain returns between the visits. The spasms are still there. These aren't separate complaints listed. It's a unified signature of the nervous system locked in survival mode. Fight or flight, high alert, ready for something bad to happen. It's not, but it's just the stress level's way too high. We all know this patient here, a professional that comes in with he's stressed out all the time. He's got chronic neck pain. He can't get enough sleep, mood swings. His emotional reactivity is off the charts, and his blood pressure instability is across. It goes up and down all the time, mostly up. Because when you're stuck in fight or flight, all the blood vessels, constrict, and it leaves you in a bad space. Um, and the missing variable here is that the nervous system is hardwired into the chronic flight or flight state. And if you stay in that state long enough, it eventually turns into PTSD. It just does. I don't know the time frame. I don't think they know the time frame, but just you cannot live in a state of fight or flight all the time. Like this, the subluxation, the structural correction, physical therapy that addresses the hardware, but the neural software, of course, is the brain, and we can regulate that to get them unstuck out of the fight or flight mode. Will neurofeedback get rid of stress? No. It will lengthen the fuse if you got a short fuse. It will make you process stress a lot better so you can get through the day. So things don't bother you as much. That's a fact. Yeah, this sympathetic lock-in. Um, Your sympathetics overdrive again. Your foot's on the gas in the fight or flight mode. You're not even touching the brakes. This activation drives muscle guarding, the spasms, vasoconstriction, reduced tissue perfusion of the blood for sure, chronic tension. And that's sometimes why we can't get people to adjust easy or adjust. There's just too much of it, especially in the thoracic spine. I have a lot of that. I've seen a lot of that. And the limbic lobe overactivation, it amplifies the pain sensitization with the pain tracks that go up and down your spinal cord, mood dysregulation, and it perpetuates this fight or flight on the edge of your seat on high alert all the time. That's a bad place to be in. But a lot of us have been there for a long time. Um, and the prefrontal cortex, it's underactivated. Your frontal cortex is the CEO of your brain. You need that to function properly. Um, and of course, we talked about the barrel reflex suppression also will increase the blood pressure and cause you problems there. Now, if we unpack, of course, the critical brain body connection, the somatic inputs, postural stress, segmental dysfunction, the subluxation, fascial restriction, they can all be from long-term fight or flight status. Okay. They send all the afferent signals up to the central nervous system and it upregulates the limbic tone and driving sympathetic dominance. Again, your body is putting you in that fight or flight mode because we didn't hit the brakes on it yet. We got to break that loop.
All right, that's mine. I before we get into this next portion of it, I just wanted to just ask a question about everyone that's on the webinar. Do you currently do anything to assess adrenal function in your office? And I just launched a poll there. If you wouldn't mind just taking a quick second to respond. And just I want to kind of get a gauge and understanding of if you do the Ragland's test. I don't know if you've heard about that. It's a simple postural, laying down or sitting, depending on the patient, blood pressure test, and then do you do the blood pressure one more time as they stand? That's a simple one. And I'll just end the poll now. Let's see what the results. So 67% yes, 33% no. Okay. So, there's obviously other tests. There's hormone tests. There's many different ways that you can assess the adrenals. Muscle testing is one of those, but neurofeedback is one of those. Brain mapping is one of those that you can assess that. So, just wanted to talk about that a little bit. Hans Salyer's general adaptation syndrome. When people are out of gas, and they go through these phases of the sympathetic mode, as Dr. Kevin mentioned. That's the fight or flight. That's the alarm phase that they're ready to run. Saber-tooth tigers after you. You're just running down the street. The resistance phase is when there's an elevated amount of stress over long periods of time, which is really the chronic state of a lot of the world, Americans these days, is there's a chronic amount of cortisol and other hormones that are in the bloodstream, and the body does not want to accept that hormone anymore at such high levels, so it becomes less resistant. So over time, there's going to be a fatigue markers. People are going to start to have more brain fog. People are not going to have as much energy throughout the day. They're really in that resistance phase. And that exhaustion phase is when they are just burnt out. They can't make it through the day. They may have some migraines. There may be some things that just shut it off where they're just completely exhausted. They need to lay in bed. They need to recover. And there's this process that you go through, through this getting out of gas. What is interesting is what the QEEG reveals is, we can actually pick up, some of these processes and what stage that they're in with brain mapping. So, as an example, if there's like active alarm phase, the hypervigilance, there's, a lot of high beta that's shown up on the brain maps. If there is a cognitive fatigue that they can't get throughout the day, without maybe taking a nap each day. There's excess theta, a lot of times that we can pick that up on the brain map. So if there's exhaustion, poor recovery, and low resilience, that's the alpha collapse where there's not enough alpha. Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, that's all right.
I'm Vanna White here, flipping
Yes,
this
you are.
back.
Very good job. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank
So that these can manifest in so many ways. So one, if you're not, if you are, most of you are doing some type of adrenal testing in the office, this is just one more tool where you can match it up to really just give you further data that supports your findings. And for me, when I was working, in functional medicine and just helping with clinicians, adrenals are it's a go-to. Everyone knows that the adrenals are the main output of the hormone production and as far as like our stress response, us being able to get through the day. We need energy. So we always need adrenals, adrenal support in our protocols at some point through the phases that an individual is going through with nutritional therapy, but it manifests in many different ways. It's not just adrenal support that they need. There may be some GI symptoms. There's a lot of chronic stress, inflammation that's impacting the brain access. With there's a long-term adrenal exhaustion that's going on and inflammation that's not being taken care of. There's that cardiovascular reactivity that Dr. Kevin mentioned, and respiratory issues where there's that tight chest, shallow breathing, and heightened arousal, and just overly on edge all the time, where the simplest thing, which shouldn't make somebody overreact or just start yelling all of a sudden, just because it was a maybe uh, something simple that came up. They should have a better stress response, and that's what neurofeedback does, is it helps dampen down our stress response so we don't overreact. Um, and so it helps with the and bidirectionally, it will help with the adrenals be able to recover because it's helping with that feedback loop. So, misconception that I not necessarily had, but I always would focus on because it's the tools that I had available to me at the time, was always go to adrenals, go to adrenals, go to adrenals, and adrenal support. But now with this top-down approach of supporting the brain to be able to support the HPA axis, the stress hormones really come from what that initial limbic threat is, what that response is. And that's where neurofeedback really is so powerful, is because it intervenes directly at the source. It helps to retrain the limbic system so we can recalibrate how the body and how the mind assesses the environment and assesses the situation, so that way we can actually reduce the amount of adrenal response before it ever starts, because our brain is initially assessing it and not responding in a hypervigilant way when it doesn't need to. So the thalamus dysfunction and sensory overload. So it's the brain's primary sensory, relay, as far as like, what it allows to get through. It's the filtering system. So under chronic stress, that filter basically just stops working as properly. So it becomes a flood of information where it's just too much sensory, information coming in. PTSD is, classic, where there's just too much information that's coming in. They can't control it at all. So where this is overwhelmed and we need to, use brain mapping, kind of focus in on what we can enhance, because there's, with low alpha power, you see there, it indicates poor thalamic gating. So disrupted rest states. When there's high beta activity, that reflects the cortical overload and sensory hypersensitivity. So there's classic stress signatures that you can see on the brain maps and things that you can target with neurofeedback to help that stress response overall. And this is just another way of talking about really the autonomic nervous system, the polyvagal theory, the vagal brake, the three branches. Mainly in my background, we would always talk about just sympathetic and parasympathetic. This is really focused more on, identifying exactly what state an individual is in when they are stressed, that ventral or not stress, if they're able to manage stress. So the ventral vagal is really just a social engagement. You're relaxed, you're around your peers or friends or family, and you're just in a place where you feel safe, you feel calm, and you feel supported. That sympathetic dominance, that's nervous system. That's when we know that where the threats are detected. But the dorsal vagal is where, we're just shutting down, where, you have someone that you don't want to be around ever. And that individual's, in your house sometimes, and you can't even function when they're around. And this is that PTSD case as well, where they're not able to function in certain environments at all because they perceive everything as a threat. And it's just chronic stress. And it's that neuroception is the concept of the term, that it kind of pulls in the thalamus, it pulls in the amygdala. It's really the concept of the brain is constantly scanning the environment, constantly scanning the situation at hand to survey if there is stress, if there is danger, if there's threat. And that is through that process is it basically puts our nervous system into one of these three states. So with neurofeedback, in brain mapping, we can see when there's frontal rhythm that's asymmetric, when there's a high amount of electrical activity in one side on the left hemisphere versus the right hemisphere, or vice versa. That's reliable to see if there's some type of reduction in the vagal response, in the vagal tone. And when the prefrontal cortex cannot generate coherence balance, it decreases the ability on how the brain can respond appropriately. So with neurofeedback, we target that and help the body to be able to respond, the mind be able to respond more appropriately, which then has the downstream effect of decreasing those hormone outputs to allow the body to respond more appropriately.
Yeah, and the brain is the missing piece, like I talked about earlier. I was always a neck down chiropractor. But the spinal care, the adjustments correct the subluxations and the structural alignment problems, and physical therapy works on the muscles, massage for joint mobility. Everything works to make the body more relaxed, but nothing's working, or nothing worked for me anyway, to make the brain relax, to get all the networks working the way they should, communication inside the networks of the brain, the frequencies getting where they should be. I didn't figure that out until I figured out what neurofeedback was when I wanted to help those kids that were in my office. So if you combine neurofeedback with chiropractic, that's the complete top-down strategy where the adjustments will hold longer, the muscles will be more relaxed, they won't be as stressed out, they'll get more sleep. I mean, that's the perfect marriage right there. Lasting regulation, yes, that's for sure. So what we do when we do a brain map, and we put a cap on your head, and there's 19 sensors on there, and we have an objective, high resolution map of cortical dysregulation. We can see what frequencies are too high and too low. And every human brain has 9 brainwave frequencies, and we compare your brain and your patient's brain to a normative brain database of somebody their age and their gender. So we know where their sweet spot should be. We know every frequency where it is spot on, where it is asleep, or where it is overactive. So we can find out exactly where the problem is. We can target that. And then we can check the asymmetry, we can check the default mode network, hyperactivity, hypoactivity. We can check everything because the brain map gives us a 6,800 voxel or electric boxes of data to get a 3D model of your brain, so we can target exactly where the problems arise. And we know how to, from that, correct it as much as possible. This was one of my uh, patients that I had. Um, he was a contractor, he was doing construction all the time, former football player. He had a lot of concussions. And for decades, he could only sleep 2 hours a night. He couldn't shut his brain off. He had high blood pressure, was on statins and heart meds. He had 2 stents placed because he had a heart attack. He had, cognitive issues. He was a regular decades-long chiropractic patient. He wasn't my chiropractic patient, but he always went to a chiropractor. And he said the adjustments weren't holding as long as they used to when the stress started going up, right? So we did neurofeedback on him. He goes, "Can you help me?" I said, "Well, I don't know. Let's have a look at your brain. Let's do a comprehensive report." And the brain map report's about 180 plus pages of data to scour through. So If there's something brain related that we can address, then yes, you're in the right place. If not, you're in the wrong place. So after we did the brain map, we found the problems, and then we started doing neurofeedback training sessions. Okay. After the first 10, his sleep improved to 4 hours a night. Okay. And then we did another brain map to see what other targets we have to go after or networks we have to go after. After the 20th session, he slept through the night. He said his brain finally felt relaxed. No more self-medication with the gummies and the weed, the pot. Yeah. So then, after 30 sessions, his cardiologist, he was going in between when I was training him with the brain, he went back and his cardiologist tapered him off his heart meds. So he's not on that anymore. Now he's only on supplements, exercising, regular chiropractic adjustments, eating well. So he wakes up refreshed. Now he's no longer depressed. I mean, his depression got so bad he was going to get a divorce from his wife, and his wife even came in and said, "You got to help him. I don't know what's going on with him." So anyway, he was locked in fight or flight, and it probably was for a long time. So it probably was PTSD. Um, this is actually his brain map. If can you guys see my pointer, Seth? Can you see my pointer over
Yes.
here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is when he came in, and let me explain what we're looking at here. This row here, a column, is the delta frequency, theta frequency, alpha, and so on, right? These all represent the top of your head looking down. The nose is up front, ears are on the side. The black dots are um, the sensors on the cap. Okay, so remember what Seth was talking about. You got Okay, so first of all, these should be gray. Okay, no color. If it is dark blue, that means the brain is asleep in that frequency. Okay. If it's red, it's way too hot. You have an electrical storm in that area. And wherever that electrical storm is over a certain lobe or area of the brain, it can't function the way it should. And like Seth mentioned earlier, if you have too much beta or too much theta, which these you can tell they do, he does, he's stuck in fight or flight. And I'll throw in gamma too, because it should not be anything from this point here over after we review the brain map report, anything in the center this way, if it is red, yellow, or orange, that means they're stuck in fight or flight. So we know this. Conversely, if you look at the center here and go to the left, if these are your healing frequencies, if it is red, your brain does not have the ability to rejuvenate itself, heal itself, or get unstuck from this. That can't be done. Oh, neurofeedback can help that for sure. And this down here, this tells us how your brain, the asymmetry is from one part of the brain to the other one with the frequencies. It should be the same and equal on both sides. Um, the phase coherence line means your brain shares information from one part to the other in the networks. Okay, if it's red, you're sharing too much information. Blue, you're not sharing enough. There has to be a balance there. There's definitely not a balance here. And the phase lag is what speed does it go around your brain? Or does the information being shared lag behind? So do you show up like at the train station an hour late? This tells me this is a very cluttered mind. This explains to us the symptoms that he was suffering with. He's got a great brain, but it's going through a battle his brain can't referee out of it. And this was after 30 sessions, the same guy. Uncluttered, right? Not perfect, but this is the way his brain functioned at its best. Because you saw the symptoms that he had before. He doesn't have any more heart meds. He can sleep through the night, not stressed. Like I said, did we get rid of his stress? No. We got rid of the way he processed it. Because if he had a job to do and he's stuck in fight or flight, you tell him to, put up some drywall or paint a wall or something. He's going to go ballistic because he doesn't have the bandwidth for that because he's stuck in fight or flight. He's worried about something bad happening. He's always ready for the next shoe to drop. So this is a before and after. This is how effective neurofeedback is and was for him.
So if anyone here that has not watched our brain heart connection webinar that we did in January, I will be sending the follow-up email after this webinar that will include this recording, but I'll also include that. So if you want to learn more about the barrel reflex and more specific information about the brain heart connection that we've referenced a few times, and the results obviously you saw with the case study Dr. Kevin just shared, there's a big correlation obviously between the stress and the heart. So if we're able to reduce the stress, you know, at the source, in the brain on how it's analyzing stress, it's going to help reduce the stress of the body, which will help with the heart tone and the ability for the heart to be at the appropriate rate that it's supposed to be. There's that from the part that for those of you that have joined late, there's a part that we want to combine with this. So we're not saying that neurofeedback is going to impact the, heart by itself, all by itself. We want to provide, multiple areas of support like metabolic support, nutritional support, fish oil, turmeric, other things that may be very specific to help with the cardiovascular health of that patient. So we're providing the metabolic support along with the brain energy support. So that bidirectional relationship can be as effective as possible. And neurofeedback helps with retraining that relationship. Okay. And the endocannabinoid system. So this is a system that not many people are aware of, especially these days with how much, THC is being utilized across the country. But with, the endocannabinoid system, a lot of the research that was coming out, it was focused around with the, hemp and how hemp can influence the endocannabinoid system. So the concept that we have, with neurofeedback, there's a link here because the chronic stress is disrupting your alpha synchrony, the ECS tone, because that is going to diminish of an endocannabinoid system. We still want to nourish that. So we still want to nourish the endocannabinoid system. And I have another poll here. I try to come up with a few polls to, just help with increasing engagement. I realized I did not share the results of the previous poll. I'll share this one. So, what supplement would you help to nourish the endocannabinoid system? Between fish oil, hemp, echinacea, or all the above. If you could just answer real quick, just to see where everyone's awareness is of how to support the endocannabinoid system with an actual supplement. I'll just give you another 2 seconds. Um, few seconds. All right. So we'll just end this poll. Um, so we got 100% was all of the above. So got a knowledgeable crowd here. So yeah, the endocannabinoid system is supported with hemp, fish oil, and with echinacea as well because of the components of those supplements. You can combine them all together as well. Um, but neurofeedback training specifically helps to target the alpha rhythm timing and coherence. So as the cortical synchrony is restored, it suggests that the endocannabinoid system tone normalizes alongside it. So there's a neurological mechanism to help with supporting the endocannabinoid system as well. So individuals that are interested in learning more about this, there's a little bit of research around this, but there's neuroscience, nutritional support, and chiropractic. Combining all that together with acupuncture or whatever it is, the modality that you're utilizing, you can really help to provide a lot of support for just another system in the body deal with stress in a much more appropriate way. So that way, if the ECS is working properly, we're having better pain perception, we're having better mood regulation, and we're able to actually manage inflammation just much more effectively in the body and also in the brain.
Oh, I
So
gotta close that poll thing.
yeah.
All right, so what neurofeedback actually does, um, well, the brain map tells us where the problem is. Like I said, where it's either overactive, underactive, what frequencies are not in the sweet spot where they should be, or the Z score, which is a normal brain database range. Um, and the training itself is with tones and I guess beeps at specific times when only the proper voxels are selected to make it work better. So the brain learns to self-regulate. It's real-time brainwave feedback. Okay. Um, First thing we do is we make sure the brain waves are within the normal range. The next thing we do is we go in there and we make sure the networks are working the way they should be. And the next thing after that because it takes about 30 sessions to get through all these steps of training. We balance the autonomic nervous system so things stay there. And pretty much once your brain is where it wants to be, it wants to stay there for the most part. Um, so, like I said, there's a lot of studies out there on this. We'll go over them. We'll share a couple of those here when we're done. But it's painless for the patient or you guys, whoever wants to do this. It's 20-minute sessions twice a week. They sit in a nice, comfortable chair, close their eyes, and the software does all the uh, regulating of the protocol or the training sessions. And it stabilizes your nervous system between visits and during visits. Um, the adjustment retention, the spasms that decrease, makes them hold their adjustments longer, which is a plus. The stress is down. The muscle spasms aren't so great that you can't adjust the thoracic spine. They're starting to relax. It regulates the heart rate variability, pain, mood, and stress. Because again, those are a lot of those are found up in the brain, a misfiring brain, um, and it adds value to your practice. If you're known in your community as the one that does neck down care, um, they're probably going to more apt seek you out than just a chiropractor that just does chiropractic or a physical therapist that just does physical therapy. Um, what the typical training program looks like. We do a map to find out where the problem is, and we design our protocol. That's where we come in with Hippocampus Labs. If you got this for your practice to work on your patients who are stuck, you do a brain map on them and you upload the brain map. We teach you how to do everything. And then we set the protocol. So you don't have to go to school for decades to learn to be a neuroscientist. We have expert neuroscientists on our side who then become on your side. We look over your patient's brain maps. Then we set up a protocol that works best for your patients. And then we upload their protocol into your laptop with our system. So all you have to do is put the cap on them and hit go because the protocol's already in there. And like I said, the training sessions, 30 to 40 sessions is what they recommend. Um, the first 10 sessions we do is to regulate the frequencies. Then we do a brain map. The second 10 is to find out what's improved, what we have to work on, what networks doesn't. That's when we start going after the networks. And like I said, the last 10 sessions is where we balance the autonomic nervous system. But you can see the progress along the way that's being done. This isn't just let's guess and hope it works. This is no, it's definitely going to work because we have so many, decades behind protocol designs and everything else. So we can go ahead and make sure you have positive results along the way. Here's some studies right here if you want to look at these. There's way more studies out there. So this is the outcomes that make a difference, that make you stand out, right? Improved heart rate variability, um, decreased muscle spasms, improved sleep, not stuck in fight or flight mode, not on high alert, not short fuse, not depressed or is deeply depressed. Again, this is not the magic bullet. This helps like 90% of the people 10 don't notice a difference. But the majority of them do is life changing for them. And again, this will help the chiropractor with their patients with more calmer mind, less muscle spasms in their spine and everything else. Bring it all together. Adjusting the body alone is not enough. Structural correction is good. Work on the subluxation, segmental dysfunction. Perfect. That needs to be done anyway, but it's only from C1 down. Now, if you incorporate neurofeedback, that works from C1 up in the brain. But if you do them both together, you integrate them together. This is where the technology is going. The functional medicine practices are going this way. Um, addiction clinics, inpatient in Malibu, wherever that place is, in California. Um, those guys do in-house neurofeedback because it helps so well with addictions. So something to consider.
So, you know, we're at the end of our our clinical component of the webinar. We really just want to make sure that everybody's aware. If anybody has any questions about what we've gone over so far, if you have any other questions about Hippocampus Labs, please put it into chat or to the Q&A section. They what you get with Hippocampus Labs is that deep clinical experience, that customized protocol that Dr. Kevin mentioned that has been worked on and developed with through his 26 years of experience. And we tap into neuroscientists on very tough cases as well to just get that enhanced support. There's continuous ongoing support both for clinical with your patients, business with your practice, marketing with out to outreach the community to bring in new patients. So it's a true clinical partnership working with us. Um, and on the next slide, we just have an ability for you to, if there's tough cases that you have in your office, and you're not incorporating neurofeedback. If you wanted to talk about, how we can potentially benefit you and benefit them, can explore some implementation options. There's lots of ways to get in touch with us. You got an email, obviously, to get into this webinar, but if you wanted to call or text, that phone number there is available. That goes directly to all of us on our team. We have availability to respond. So if you have clinical questions that you wanted to get a faster response to, yeah, you could definitely text us. If you have not gotten a QEEG before, I would highly recommend that you actually experience this for yourself. So, send me a text and let us know if that's something that you'd like. If you have colleagues that would be interested in this, if this you don't think this is something that you can incorporate on your own, but you want a business partnership with local colleagues, we have a couple that are actually doing that, moving forward together as a group for referral benefits as well. So there's many ways to actually incorporate this, but really you don't have to go back to school and overall learn everything to be able to get results. And that's really where we come in is we help you get results from day one, both from the clinical part and from the business component. So I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for your time. We are having our next webinar, and it's going to be continuous throughout the year. It is the second Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we will continue on. The next topic is on sports and fitness and how we can improve those elite athletes. Because even if you don't have, if you have, in a thriving practice and you're getting amazing results with your patients, there are those that are elite athletes, elite executives that want to go to the next level that also use neurofeedback. We have athletes, professional athletes that use this. Dr. Kevin works with elite race car drivers, and he's worked with some of the Indianapolis Colts and professional football players. So there's lots of ways that you can benefit by tapping into our expertise and supporting uh, really almost every avenue, whether it be individuals that have specific diagnoses or just individuals that want to just go to the next level and optimize their health. We're available here to help you. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thanks, Dr.
Thank
Kevin.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
All right. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.